for me always made me think about how the words like boundaries and walls can be taken as a negative, a line you do not cross, a picket line. But walls and boundaries are sometimes there for very good reasons, and they can be the making of a good foundation for friendships and for rules and regulations, however arcane, fulfill something and achieve something. I picked this up so quickly. Okay. There's something that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it and spills the boulders in the sun, makes gaps even where two can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair, for they have left not one stone unstoned, but they would have that rabbit out of hiding. To please the yelping dogs, the gaps I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time, we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on the day we meet to walk the line and set that wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go, to each boulder that has fallen to each, and some are loaves and some so heavy, nearly balls. We have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are till our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough when handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game. One on one side, it comes to little more. There where it is that we do not need the wall, he is all pine, I am all apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the pine cones under his pines. I tell him this, he says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where they are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I build a wall, I'd want to know, what am I walling in or walling out? And then, and then to whom I would like to give a fence, something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only and the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having said the thought so well. Again he says, good fences make good neighbors.
This is an interesting one. It's called For Once, Then Something. Others taunt me with having knelt at Welford, always wrong to the light, so never seeing deeper down into the well than where the water gives me back in a shining surface picture. Me, myself, in the summer, heaven godlike, looking out of a wreath of fern and cloud tops. Once, when trying with chin against the well curb, I discerned, as I thought, beyond the picture, through the picture, a something white, uncertain, something more of the depths, and then I lost it. Water came to rebuke the too clear water. One drop fell from a fern, and lo, a ripple. It shook whatever it was lay there at the bottom, blurred it, blotted it out. What was that whiteness? Truth? A pebble of quartz? For once, then something. I like that one. Look what else I've got here. Where did I put? Where did I put? There's something else I want to. Here's a little bit more history about him. His parents were both educators, and his father worked as an editor at San Francisco Evening Bulletin for many years. His father died early, and that was the reason that the family was relocated back to New England to be with Robert Frost's grandfather in Lawrence, Mass. That's where he graduated from high school. And he also, let's see, I'll start read some of this to you. Although known for his late association with rural life, Frost grew up in the city, and he published his first poem in his high school's magazine. He attended Dartmouth College for 2 months, long enough to be accepted into their Delta Chi fraternity. Frost returned home to teach and to work at various jobs, including helping his mother teach her class of unruly boys, delivering newspapers and working in a factory maintaining carbon arc lamps. He did not enjoy these jobs, feeling his true calling was poetry. And in his adult years, after graduating high school, in 1894, he sold his first poem, My Butterfly, an Elegy, published in the New York Independent. He received $15 for it, which in that day is the equivalent to our $409. So that was pretty good for first go. Proud of his accomplishment, he proposed marriage to Eleanor Miriam White, but she demurred, wanting to finish college at St. Lawrence University before they married. Frost then went on to excursion of the Great Dismal Swamp in Virginia. Never even heard about it, let alone think it's a destination spot. But there he went, and asked her again upon his return. Having graduated, she agreed, and they were married in Lawrence, Mass. in 1895. He attended Harvard University for a while, but voluntarily left due to illness. And his grandfather bought he and his wife a farm in Derry, New Hampshire, which is where all of that inspiration started to come out. And he ultimately, his farming proved unsuccessful, and he returned to the field of education as an English teacher at New Hampshire's Pinkerton Academy until 1911, and then New Hampshire Normal School, now called Plymouth State University in Plymouth, New Hampshire. And it was in 1912 that he sailed to Great Britain. He stayed there until the beginning of World War I. He returned in 1915 and bought a farm in Franconia, New Hampshire. There he launched a career of writing, teaching, and lecturing. His family homestead served as Frost's summer home until 1938 and is maintained today as a museum of poetry and conference site. In 1924, he won his first of 4 Pulitzer Prizes for the book New Hampshire, a Poem and Notes from Grace Notes. He would win additional Pulitzer Prizes for collected poems, that was in 1931, and Further Range in 1937, and A Witness Tree in 1943. One of the things that he is famous for is being a guest speaker at John F. Kennedy's inaugural in 1961. He was asked to speak a poem, and I think I have it. Where is the other book? And he wrote a poem specifically for that event, and on the day of the event, He didn't have it committed to memory, and because of the weather conditions, was having difficulty reading his notes. So instead, he recited a poem that he had written earlier, but felt was appropriate for the occasion. And that's called The Gift Outright. And it says, "The land was ours before we were the land's. She was our land more than 100 years before we were her people. She was ours in Massachusetts, in Virginia, but we were England's, still colonials, possessing what we still were unpossessed by what we now no more possessed. Something we were withholding made us weak until we found out that it was ourselves. We were withholden from our land of living, and forthwith found salvation in surrender. Such as we were, we gave ourselves outright. The deed of gift was many deeds of war. To the land vaguely realizing westward, but still unstoried, artless, unenhanced, such as she was, such as she would become." So that's what he read for the president. What he actually read, and I'm sorry, I'm just not a very good reader or speaker. But what he wrote was uniquely for John F. Kennedy, and the title of it is simply Dedication. And I'm going to try that one for you. Summoning artists to participate in the August occasions of the state seems something artists ought to celebrate. Today is, for my cause, a day of days, and his be poetry's old-fashioned praise. Who was the first to think of such a thing? This verse that in acknowledgement I bring goes back to the beginning of the end of what had been for centuries the trend, a turning point in modern history. Colonial had been the thing to be as long as the great issue was to see. What country'd be the one to dominate by character, by tongue, by native trait? The New World Christopher Columbus found. The French, the Spanish, and the Dutch were downed and counted out. Heroic deeds were done. Elizabeth I and England won. Now came on a new order of the ages, that in the Latin of our founding sages. Is it not written on the dollar bill? We carry in our purse and pocket still. God nodded his approval of as good. So much those heroes knew and understood. I mean, the great four, Washington, John Adams, Jefferson, Madison. So much they knew as consecrated seers. They must have seen ahead what now appears. We would bring empires down around our ears, and by the example of our declaration, make everybody want to be a nation. And this is no aristocratic joke at the expense of negligible folk. We see how seriously the races swarm in their attempts at sovereignty and form. They are our wards, we think, to some extent, for the time being and with their consent, to teach them how democracy is meant. New order of the ages, did we say? If it looks none too orderly today, 'tis a confusion. It was ours to start. So in it have to take courageous part. No one of honest feeling would approve of a ruler who pretended not to love a turbulence he had the better of. Everyone knows the glory of the twain who gave America the airplane to ride the whirlwind and the hurricane. Some poor fool has been saying in his heart, glory is out of date in life and art. Our venture in revolution and outlawry has justified itself in a freedom story, right down to now in glory upon glory. Come fresh from an election like the last, the greatest vote a people ever cast, so close yet sure to be abided by. It is no miracle our mood is high. Courage is in the air, embracing whiffs, better than all the stalemates, the ands and the ifs. There was a book of profile, tales declaring for the emboldened politicians daring to break with followers when in wrong, a healthy independence of throng, a democratic form of right divine, to rule first answerable to high design. There is a call to life a little sterner and braver for the earner, learner, yearner. Less criticism of the field and court, and more preoccupation with the sport. It makes the prophet in us all presage the glory of a next Augustan age, of a power leading from its strength and pride, of young ambition eager to be tried. Firm in our free beliefs without dismay, in any game the nations want to play. A golden age of poetry and power, of which this noonday's the beginning hour. I thought that was pretty cool, and he never got to recite it at the inauguration, but he did afterwards. Does anybody else have something to bring up? No? What else do I have that's fun? What else do I have that's fun? Interesting comments that have been written about Robert Frost over the years. Poet and critic Robert Frost, along with Stevenson Eliot, seems to me the greatest of American poets of the century. Frost's virtues are extraordinary. No other living poet has written so well about the actions of ordinary men. His wonderful dramatic monologues or dramatic scenes come out of a knowledge of people that few poets have had. And they are written in a verse that uses, sometimes with absolute mastery, the rhythms of actual speech. So, Frost's seriousness and honesty, stating that Frost was particularly skilled in representing a wide range of human experience in his poems. That is interesting. And here's another, let's see where it starts. These are all comments that critics have written about Frost, and I'm going to leave all the names out a little bit here, but here's another one. In an introduction to a book of essays, it's noted that the other Frost that this particular person, Gerald, discerned behind the genial homespun New England rustic, the dark Frost, was desperate, frightened, and brave. Has become the Frost we've all learned to recognize, and the little-known poems singled out as central to Frost's canon are now to be found in many of the anthologies. There's a lot of short poems that are just a few sentences long, and They tend to get disregarded, but they really do have a lot of meaning as well. And here's another. In 2003, critic Charles McGrath noted that critical views of Frost's poetry have changed over the years, as has his public image. In an article called The Vicissitudes of Literal Reputation, McGrath wrote, Robert Frost, at the time of his death in 1963, was generally considered to be a New England folkie. In 1977, the third volume of Lawrence Thompson's biography suggested that Frost was a much nastier piece of work than anyone had imagined. A few years later, thanks to the reappraisal of critics and a younger poets like of him, it bounced back, in this time as a bleak and unforgiving modernist. So it's interesting how every generation has changed in how they perceive what they're reading and how it changes. Good. Yeah, and it changes from generation to generation. Culture changes, society changes, and so we've had a lot of fun with doing these literary afternoons because we've taken we've tried to look at what the background is of how we got to here today. Like Robert Frost was a fan of Emerson and Thoreau. You can clearly see that they have a lot of things in common there. Jack Kerouac was a huge fan of Robert Frost and Thoreau and Emerson. And his style is totally different, but he credits them as what he read and inspired him in some way to go on and do something totally different, really. But it's just kind of fun to play with it and see where we're at today and how it came to be that way. And we're gradually working our way. We're getting up into more of the modern things. We've done the British Romantics in the past and few different genres. H.P. Lovecraft was a fan and contemporary, actually, of Robert Frost. And there again, he did a lot of his stories based out of New England with some interesting spooky Mother Nature things added into it. So everybody takes their own twist on it. I don't know what else I have here to read to you. I picked out so many, and I'm not practiced at any of them. Your claims to immortality are two. The one you made, the other one you grew. Sorry to have no name for you but you. We never knew exactly where to look, but found one in the delta of a brook. One in a cavern where you used to cook. Coming on such an ancient human trace seems as expressive of the human race as meeting someone living face to face. We date you by your depth in silt and dust, your probable brute nature's disgust, at which point we are totally nonplussed. You made the eoth, you grew the bone, the second more particularly your own, and likely to have been enough alone. You made me ask if I would go to time, would I gain anything by using rhyme? Or aren't the bones enough? I live to line. And I know it's in both books. Can't remember where I had it marked. It's called The Ghost House. Ghost House. Oh, okay. There's two. First one, Into My Own. One of my wishes is that those dark trees, so old and firm they scarcely show the breeze, were not as twere the merest mask of gloom, but stretched away under the edge of doom. I should not be withheld, but that some day into their vastness I should steal away, fearless of ever finding open land or highway where the slow wheel pours the sand. I do not see why I shouldn't e'er turn back, or those should not set forth upon my track, to overcome me, to overtake me. Who should miss me here and long to know if still I held them dear? They would not find me changed from him they knew, only more sure of all I thought was true. And this next one is called Ghost House. And there again, this takes me back to being a kid in rural New Hampshire, because homesteads were very old, and sometimes as people moved on in time, back 300 years ago and whatever, there would be cellar holes, a lilac tree, a little path or something. It's all, or a little pile of artifacts or things that you would find around. That was the only thing that would show you that people used to live there and had a life there. And it was always a little spooky and fascinating to me as a kid, because on our property there was that, and I would just roam around and sit and think about, well, who were these people? And, what did their house look like? And where did they go? And a lot of them got up and left and went west during the Western expansion, because boulders in New Hampshire don't make you much of a living, It's a rocky, hard way to earn a living. But anyway, this one's called Ghost House. I dwell in a lonely house, I know, that vanished many a summer ago, and left no trace but the cellar walls, in a cellar in which the daylight falls, and the purple-stemmed wild raspberries grow. O'er ruined fences, the grapevines shield, the woods come back to the mowing field. The orchard tree has grown one copse of new wood and old where the woodpecker chops. The footpath down to the well is healed. I dwell with a strangely aching heart in that vanished abode where far apart, on that disused and forgotten road that has no dust bath now for the toad. Night comes, the black bats tumble and dart, the whippoorwill is coming to shout, and hush and cluck and flutter about. I hear him begin far enough away, full many a time to say his say, before he arrives to say it out. It's under the small dim summer star. I know not who these mute folk are, who share the unlit place with me, those stones out under the low-limbed tree, doubtless bear names that the mosses mar. They are tireless folk, but slow and sad, though too close-keeping are lass and lad, with none among them that ever sings, and yet in view of how many things as sweet companions as might have been, as might be had. I'm sorry. But I just thought that was an interesting one. Anybody else want to read something?
I think I'll read, well, because everything we can talk about today, trees seem to
birches in particular.
It's gonna be birches.
Yeah, it is
That's
a
all
good
I
one.
thought of such a visual. I mean, you can imagine yourself.
That's
New to anybody in this room.
that's a good selection, and he mentions birches in a lot of other poems as well. It's interesting.
Tijan, this dream's where you belong. Your golden journey now has just begun. With your mother's arms to hold you, your brother's light to guide, your